What do you think that it would take for us to achieve heaven on earth? Do you think it's possible in our lifetimes?
I believe that we're going to have to see a lot more devastation before we come to our knees. Revelation, in a blink of an eye, that all things will change.
I recently booked an appointment with Jamie of Refractive Healing. Not only was the session comforting, peaceful, and effective, but afterward, Jamie used her intuitive gifts to give me the exact advice I needed to deal with my current challenges. It felt as if Source was speaking through her to me. I want to share this gift with you. Book your free distant healing session with Jamie today, right here, or using the link in my description. Thank you to Refractive Healing for partnering with me in this video. I am here with Dr. Kathleen Ball, researcher, traveler, and explorer of ancient sites. She had a life-altering near-death experience in 1990, and we're going to learn about that today. Thank you so much for joining me, Kathleen.
You're welcome. I've been really looking forward to this show. The experience in 1990 was probably the most profound, pivotal experience that I had. I had always been interested in history. You know, I had been an artist most of my life. But when I had the near death experience, when I came back with a whole different perspective on life. I mean, I really changed all of my habits. And so I began reading and researching everything I could get my hands on, as I was an art professor. So when I would teach art, I also taught about these things and to give people inspiration and things to create art with this content. And a lot of my art revolved around this content. It fed it was the content, fed my content. March 11th, 1990, I emerged a completely different human being.
Okay, so could you share with us your near-death experience then?
Sure. It was a different experience. I didn't get hit by a truck or OD or any of that stuff. A lot of people, I didn't believe in inducing my own death. So I really had a strong belief about that. What I did was one night I sat up and I wrote out to everyone I loved, everything I wanted all my stuff to go to, who I wanted it to go to, all that sort of thing. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, I laid down and I just asked God to take my life. And the next thing I knew, I was breathing. My heart didn't feel like it was pumping and I felt locked in the body, just locked. And the next thing I knew, I shot out of my body and had just an amazing, powerful experience. There was no time, past, present, future, all happening at the same time. I felt that I was in the midst of angels, angelic beings. It was really difficult because there was no physicality like we have here on Earth. It was much less dense, the dimensional reality that I was in. And telepathically, I could communicate with the beings that were there. And it was just beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. I didn't want to come back. I absolutely had no desire to come back. And so they allowed me to stay there and witness. I saw the essence of trees and the essence of birds and the essence of everything that we see here on Earth. And finally, at one point, I got this telepathic message that I could choose to stay because I was urging. I had that urge, that feeling that I wanted to stay. So it was answered with this statement that I could stay there if I wanted. But if I did, then I would have to relive this life again. And this life for me has been extremely difficult. It has not. Nobody that I know would ever want to have lived my life. Nobody. So, and that I had a mission, that I did have a mission that I had chosen before I came into this life. And so if I returned, I could get back on step with that mission. and be able to participate in that. And at some point, know my heart's desire. And what my heart's desire was, was to see heaven on earth, to see a world and be a participate in a world that would come about, that would be based on cooperation and harmony and peace. So this was my deep seated, born with gut in my soul, heart's desire. And so I carried that kernel with me back, and I decided to come back. So when I did decide to come back, again, I felt this, falling into my body feeling, and I couldn't breathe. My heart was, I felt stuck. And, within a few moments, I don't know how long it took, I caught my first breath and I started feeling my heart pumping again. And I was just so thankful to be alive for the first time in my life. I had never been thankful to be alive, never. So this was a complete change for me, to be happy to be alive, to have hope, and to have a belief in something that was going to come about. What I do believe that I saw in that dimensional reality was one of the possibilities of our, eventual, what it's going to be like on earth here. I believe it was not heaven. I believe that it was a future reality, a future possibility that we can attain here. And it's much less dense than what we know now. We were vibrating at much faster frequency level than we are now. And I don't know how long that'll take for that to happen, but that's what I'm committed to. I'm committed to that. And I know a lot of other people that are committed to about the same news. So I'm not alone. In 1990, I was alone. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't know anybody who had, if I told them about my near death experience, they thought I was nuts. But now there's been enough people that have had similar experiences or have been downloaded information about, a higher consciousness that we're moving into. There's enough people now that we're almost the majority, I think, at this point.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. Did you say that they showed you that you would have to relive your life if you didn't go back, like the same life again? Or was it another life that would be just as hard?
Yeah, it would be comparable. Now, I didn't know if that meant coming back here to Earth or going to a different planet. I didn't know, but I did understand very clearly that it would be just as difficult. And because what I've come to find out that I didn't understand then is that difficulties that we have in life, they're lessons and they're necessary. It's like honing a sword. To get it sharp and beautiful, we have to, it's rough. It's not a nice experience. I mean, if the sword had feelings, it wouldn't like that, right? But we have to go through these experiences. It's honing our soul is what we're doing. We're preparing our soul for more in-depth, more challenges that require more wisdom. And we don't gain wisdom without challenge. We don't. It just doesn't happen. The saying from the Tao Te Ching and some of the Japanese Shinto belief systems, you cannot know the darkness until you know the light. You cannot know the light until you know the darkness. You cannot know joy until you know the pain. You cannot know these things unless you know its opposite. So true wisdom is birthed from difficulty. And I didn't know this then, but I really, really fully understand it now.
So, do you think that we choose to come into these lives to gain that wisdom and experience, or are we required to live these lives?
I think we choose to step up to the plate for spiritual growth
Mm.
because the spiritual growth that I've that I've accumulated, whatever you want to call it, acquired in this lifetime has been a billionfold. I mean, I literally have changed that much in this lifetime. The wisdom that I've attained, I couldn't even fathom. I wouldn't even been able to fathom what that would look like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. This wouldn't.
Right. So you mentioned that you saw a possible future of where we're heading on the earth.
Yeah, yeah.
How likely do you think it is that we'll go down that path, and what would it take for us to get there?
Well, what it is, it's always the collective. We're co-creating our future. And so anytime we see a potential future, like I saw, it's not necessarily going to look exactly like that. That may be an aspect of it because no one person can see the future. It's always fluctuating and changing. The future is not static. It's always becoming based on our collective consciousness and what we put into that. So I believe that it will be an aspect of it. And I think that it may be a prevailing aspect of it because it's a pretty powerful vision. It was a very powerful vision that I saw. I actually painted it a couple of times. And those paintings are unfortunately not in my cabin here. They're down at my other house, or I'd shown you. But yeah, I actually painted three paintings. One was destroyed in the house fire, but I painted those just as a snapshot of trying to capture what I experienced during my near death. And every time I look at them, it reminds me and kind of rejuvenates that commitment. Because you do get worn down, you get worn down. There's this planet is this very interesting planet. It has a tendency to wear people down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's nice to have reminders. An NTE is you can't help but be completely changed after an NDE. I mean, I've talked to people that have had NDEs and eventually kind of gone back into old behaviors and stuff. But there's been very few. It usually impacts you pretty strongly to the point where most people, they just continue on a new path for the rest of their life.
Right. So how did your NDE impact your life?
I was always an artist, but I decided to go back and finish my degree and I began teaching. And I thought that would be the best way to communicate my vision for the world, to share my vision was through beauty, through art, through that, because art isn't, you're not talking. Art is a right brain experience. So people who visualize art are visualizing, they're taking the information in through the right brain, Because as soon as you speak, you're in your left brain immediately. So anyway, I thought that would be the best way, but it didn't satisfy me. It just didn't seem to be complete enough. It just didn't seem to do what I what I wanted. And so after the fire and the liver transplant and all that, and by that time I had already found the cave too in Brazil. 2015, I found the cave in Brazil. So 9 days after that, my house burned down. When I got home from California, my house burned down 9 days after I found the cave. Then 7 weeks after the fire, the doctor told me that the tumor in my liver was too aggressive and I was going to have the transplant, which I had been fighting. I was looking for any possible way not to have that transplant. I was very, very worried about the anti-rejection meds because I don't handle medication well, never have. And so when I had the liver transplant, sure enough, within the first year, the medication was so strong, it destroyed nerves in my brain, did nerve damage, and I lost 95% of my hearing. So I now have a cochlear implant to be able to hear. I had to take a disability retirement from my teaching because I couldn't teach with the hearing loss, the way it was. Okay, what am I going to do now? And I loved traveling. I loved research. I loved going to ancient sites and learning and teaching other people. I had been taking groups of people to Egypt by this time and into France along the trail of Leonardo da Vinci, following his path. I had taken people to India. There was, I had done some tours and things. So I thought, well, maybe I can take people to this cave and start doing tours and get the word out and then slowly write a book. Well, one thing led to the next, and the synchronicity, the way my life always is. When I went back over there, 2016, I spent the whole year recovering from the transplant. 2017, I went back into where the cave was, and they had a huge fire, so I was not able to access the cave. 2018, I had met a photographer and film producer who was in that area, who agreed to go in with me and film the rediscovery of the cave when I went back in to find it again. So 2018, which wasn't easy, we spent 3 days hiking before we finally found the cave again. And he filmed the whole rediscovery and, some of the inside of the cave. And I came back to the US and I had just a zillion answers. How did this Templar cave, how was I able to find this Templar cave in the middle of Alta Paraíso in central Brazil? Where does I wanted to know the dates. I wanted to know everything about it. And so that led me to Portugal. So in 2018, right after I got back from Brazil, I went into Portugal and a girlfriend of mine introduced me to a Templar cross expert. And he corroborated that the cross above my cave was definitely Templar. But we still couldn't figure out dates. We weren't able to establish dates. Now, I knew, though, from having been in Dome, France myself in 2009, seeing all the crosses and the graffiti and the chisel marks in that dungeon in Dome where they had held the Templars for 7 years until their death. I had been in that space, so I knew what Templar markings looked like, graffiti. So I knew some of those markings were in my cave also. So that gave me an approximate year date of the cave of approximately 1300s.
For the viewers who are watching who may not be familiar with the Templars, could you explain a little bit about who they are or who they
Sure.
were?
Yeah, I bumped into the Templars during my research after the near death when I started, checking into esoteric belief systems and spiritual belief systems and whatnot, Kabbalah, blah, blah, blah. Leonardo da Vinci, who was living with King Francis I, who was considered a Gnostic. And eventually I found out about the Templars. It was like, well, wow. The Templars only lived like 100 years or so before Leonardo. And so a lot of this information about the Templars was still pretty fresh in people's minds. They were still aware of it. And my personal belief is that the Templars were they just went underground. There's many, many families, Templar families in Portugal that claim descendancy all the way back to the original Templars. So, and I believe that. I believe that's true. I talked to men in Brazil as well who claim ancestry, Templar ancestry, and I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. So, who the Templars were at face value was one thing. Who the Templars were in their elite group, their inner circles, was another thing. The Templars supposedly were put, the band of knights were organized supposedly to protect pilgrims going into the Holy Land. Now, it just doesn't hold water because originally there were only 9 of them and there were thousands of pilgrims. So I really don't see how that story I don't understand how it's held water throughout history. because it's impractical. Doesn't make sense. But we do know that the Templars, that when they did organize over in the Holy Land, when they did finally make it there, because you got to understand, they originated in Greece, which most people don't know, in about 1040. They went from there into Constantinople because Constantinople was the hub of all spiritual belief systems. And so that they went there, and there's still remnants from what I believe Templars, remnants and graffiti in Derinkuyu, which is an underground cave system. So I believe that they were searching for relics. They were searching for their history. You have to remember that many of these members, these original members, were Jews. And so the Jews typically passed down oral traditions that went back thousands of years. And so I believe that they had esoteric beliefs that they adhered to that were powerful. And then you top that off and you go into the Holy Land, and now they're interacting with Sikhs, Sufis, and they go right to the Temple Mount, right? They go right to the Temple Mount. They could have stayed in the palace. No, but they went to the stables, which, typically would make no sense. But they went to the stables, which was right over the top of the Temple Mount. And there's evidence. We found clear evidence that they were under those tunnels, excavating those tunnels. So what they came back with, we don't know. But what they created in Portugal is a pretty good indication of what they wanted to see, what they were dedicated to. And now this is where it comes and aligns with my heart's desire. What they created in Portugal, they actually created the country, the country for the Portuguese king, who had affiliations with Templars anyway. But what they created was a sovereign nation, and the only nation at that time frame in all of Europe that included Christians, Catholics, Jews, Protestants, Cathars, Islam, Moors, everyone. They were the only one. They were also the last state, the last country that the Inquisition got into and infiltrated. The Inquisition did not infiltrate Portugal until the 1500s. Okay, not completely. They were able to convince King Denis to change the name of the order to the Knights of Christ in 1314, but they were not able to get rid of them in Portugal. They were far too powerful. So here we have, they have created this sovereign nation of harmony and peace, acceptance of others, respect for all religious backgrounds, economic backgrounds, etc. And I believe that when 1307, when King Philip the Fair decided he was going to hunt down the Templars and annihilate them all, I think that was their cue, and they started going to different countries. The Portuguese were always the boat builders. They were the first boat builders. And I think at that point that they were going to South America, North America. I think they went as far as into India. They went to Africa, looking for places that they could colonize, that they could recreate their dream of a sovereign nation with the idea of eventually bringing about heaven on earth, the entire earth.
Wow, that's amazing. Is there any indication that they're still around today?
Yes, the Templars have reorganized, and I was there for the powerful commemoration celebration in 2019 in October. I had been invited. I had no idea what I was going to witness, but there were hundreds, thousands of Templars that signed a pact. In other words, they are now unified worldwide throughout the entire world for the first time in over 700 years. This fulfills the prophecy that they would return in 700 years and continue with their agenda. And my next book, matter of fact, that's what my next book is about. It's called The Templar Agenda that I'm working on right now. So,
Oh, okay. So, what is the Templar agenda?
Templar Agenda is to bring about heaven on earth,
Mhm.
basically. But I also will be talking about how they're going about it and what countries they traveled to, leaving people there, the Brazilians in the area where my cave is, some of them are descendants, direct descendants from Templars themselves. So what it looks like the Templars married into the local people there, which could be the case in Peru, it could be the case in Africa, India, and wherever else they travel.
Okay, so here's a question for you. In your opinion, with your experiences and all the research that you've done, what do you think that it would take for us to achieve heaven on earth? Do you think it's possible in our lifetimes?
Yes, I do. I don't know about our lifetime. Well, maybe your lifetime, but maybe not mine. I would like to see it. It's my dream. It's my heart's desire. But I think it's going to take a collective shift in awareness. And I think that it's going to have to happen like in an instant. And it says in Revelations, in a blink of an eye, it talks about in a blink of an eye that all things will change. And I think it's going to be something along those lines. I also believe that we're going to have to see a lot more devastation before we come to our knees.
Yeah, it's a really tricky thing to talk about the logistics of how this would happen because you can't come about it through trying to force people into. I mean, it has to be each individual person's choice or else it's not legitimate.
Right. It has to be a collective. It has to
Mhm.
be collective. Now I do these temples, that with I have a couple gals that we do these temples, and that's where we basically align them with intention of bringing about harmony and peace and things in certain spaces where we build these temples. And that's the main thing is that our intentions have to be pure. But it's a place to go where people it's similar to Stonehenge and some of these ancient temples that people have gone to previously, for thousands of years. We're using rock and we're using, sorts of elements and whatnot, the spirits of the land. We're bringing the electromagnetism, very similar to what Freddie Silva does, but ours are a little bit more in the moment. They're more spontaneous. We don't measure with measuring tapes because the ancients didn't have that stuff. They intuited it all. And we did our first one and we realized we went back in and measured everything. It was all measured perfectly. And we never used a measuring tape for anything. It was all intuitively. Everything was intuitive. But these are great places if you can build them in your yard. If you have land, you can build a bigger one. We just use natural elements, rocks, stones, crystals, things like that to build them. And it's a process. I mean, there's a process that you go through, but to do it. But it's very spontaneous when you do begin to build them, and they're powerful. They're very powerful. When my girlfriend Denise Shad and I did our first one together, we literally felt our heart chakras open, and we stayed that way for 3 weeks. We were just open and just felt amazing. So there is a transformational power in creating these things.
Wow. So what can the average person who may be listening do? People may be asking, what can I do to do my part to bring about this peace and harmony on the earth?
Be kind to others. We don't know what is behind the face of a human being that we come into contact with. They could have just had their husband, wife, daughter, child, whatever die. We don't know what's going on. Should be kind. And I'm not talking about codependency. I'm talking about just kindness. We can build these temples, people, you can contact me through my website, email, Facebook, whatever. And I do show people how to do these, and they do change the atmosphere in an area. They also are great places for groups of people to come, have a like mind, and meditate on what they would like to see as a future reality. I think the more time we spend in these types of practices of meditation and intention, the sooner we're going to get there. And I think, all over the world, if we there's a lot of things going on like this right now. Michael Tillender's got a great organization. He's working worldwide now, but it starts in your neighborhood. And it's just amazing that these kinds of things are happening all over the world, and they're happening in abundance. We're not hearing about it because the news is owned by people that doesn't want us to hear about these things, but they are happening, and they're happening much more often than a lot of this horrible stuff that we do see. I personally turned the news off 20 years ago. I don't watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, you and me both. Well, Kathleen, thank you so much for doing this interview and being willing to share from your personal experiences. And I would love for you to share about your books and any other projects you have going on that you may not have mentioned.
Oh yeah. So my book is based on the film, the backstory of the film. And the film is out on Gaia TV. It's called The Brazilian Templars Mystery. You can also stream it on Amazon Prime. And the book I came out this year, actually in July, and it's a Grail quest and discovery of a mysterious Knights Templar cave in Brazil. And that is also available on Amazon. However, if you would like a signed author's copy, you can contact me through Facebook, PM me, Kathleen Ball, or the Templars in Brazil, or you can go to my website and make a request there, and I will get a signed author's copy to you. I have lots of podcasts and interviews that are all the links of which are on my website. And I do speaking engagements as well. So, and if you wanted me to speak and do a film, I can actually show the film and do a screening. You can contact me through the website. So.
All right. I will have those links in the description. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Melissa.
Thank you for watching the Love Covered Life podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video with your friends, and comment with your thoughts and opinions. And check the description box for the links to my TikTok and Instagram, where I share the more personal side of my life, my website, where I share my paintings and merch, and also the Be a Guest link for anybody who's interested in sharing their story. Be loved, be happy, be at peace, and thank you for watching.